address acts of violence, we need to get to the bottom of the problem. We need to first understand what is the root cause of radicalization. What is the breeding ground of radicalization? What are these narratives, these communal political fault lines that are feeding onto these radicalizations? We have had de-radicalization programs which have not been very successful. So I think for our security agencies, we crackdowns will happen. We will investigate. We will imprison these people who are radicalized, who are inspired to conduct acts of violence. But I would take a step back. I would, in fact, recommend involvement of psychologists, involvement
Mhm.
of sociologists, involvement of people from different professional backgrounds to understand the cause of radicalization and address the issue from its root cause.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Welcome to the gist. My guest is Aishwaria Sonavane, a researcher at the Takshashila Institution in Bangalore, and we are going to discuss the blast that happened in Delhi the other day, looking at the role of professionals in the attack that happened. Of course, professionals in terror groups is as old as the hills, but the involvement of doctors in India would seem to be a first. Aishwarya, what's your view on this? How do you see this, the role of doctors in the Delhi blasts?
Thank you so much, Surya, for having me. Firstly, I want to start by saying that historically, professionals, including doctors, have been involved in extremist networks, though often in peripheral roles. For instance, Tawaur Hussain Rana, who was linked to the 2008 Mumbai attacks, was a trained military doctor whose contribution was primarily logistical, um, and he was involved mostly in providing cover. So, what is more interesting in these cases is the emergence of operational roles for medical professionals. Here, we are not merely talking about sympathizers or funders, however, potentially trained individuals who are using their professional expertise in ways that directly support extremist activities. Well, we don't have enough information yet, and hopefully, we can assess this more when the investigation covers. But I think the most prominent aspect of this case is the operational involvement of doctors.
Mhm. So, what is it about doctors? Is it because they inspire trust, like perhaps teachers? I mean, is that what it's about? Is it something else?
So it's a combination of factors. I would think that doctors bring a combination of technical knowledge, some degree of societal legitimacy that can be misused in extremist contexts. Their specialized understanding of pharmaceuticals, chemicals, biological agents is definitely one aspect. And equally important is the role that they play in sustaining operations. Providing medical care to the wounded operatives, keeping networks functional, keeping cells functional. And beyond technical skills, doctors, like I said, also enjoy social legitimacy, institutional access, which allows them to operate in ways that are less likely to raise suspicion, immediate suspicion. And this is not hypothetical, right? Transnational extremist groups, including the Islamic State, have explicitly targeted medical personnel. In 2015, when Islamic State was holding territory in the Levant region, they issued calls for foreign health workers through high profile online campaigns, social media propaganda. Uh, we have seen medical professionals also joining groups like Al Qaeda in the past. So, again, this is not a very new phenomena. Doctors have played a supporting, peripheral role in these groups.
Not to forget Dr. Ayman Zawahiri, the head of Al Qaeda, who was knocked off by US missile strike in Kabul. He was a doctor and a practicing doctor. So you think doctors is something new to India? Is it the first time?
That's right. Dr. Ayman al Zawahiri was a surgeon, also the longest living leader of Al Qaeda. I would say we have had professionals in the past with backgrounds in engineering, IT, but a module as such, which is specifically targeting India, specifically involving doctors, seems like a relatively novel phenomena, at least in the modern counterinsurgency operation. So that is definitely something that is new.
Does this alter the manner in which security and intelligence agencies tackle terrorism, or this is an addition to something which, I mean, in addition to the doctors, in addition to the engineers and others, we now also have doctors. So does it make it more complicated?
I would say yes to an extent, where highly educated and socially integrated individuals do not sort of fit the traditional profiling boxes, right? Counterinsurgency operations were initially focused on human intelligence. They would specifically go to, in terms of Islamist militancy, they would specifically go to mosques, madrasas. Um, there were Hawala networks that were followed. So doctors today do not fit these traditional profiling boxes. And I would say the fact that recruitment has also moved digitally, it also makes it harder. But specifically, when we speak of doctors or highly educated professionals, their professional status, income, social networks make detection more difficult. And I would say in today's times, we need strategies that are nuanced, exclusive, and sensitive to the diversity of individuals who may be drawn to these extremist networks. Of course, without stigmatizing professions, communities, or any particular religions.
Mhm. So this is not exclusive to India. It's happened in other parts of the world already.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say that the idea that terrorism particularly attracts the poor or marginalized community, someone who's misled, is definitely a misconception. In India, groups like the Indian Mujahideen, which is defunct now, have included individuals from professional backgrounds such as engineering, IT, other technical fields. Globally, like you said, this pattern is evident with Ayman al Zawahiri. Osama bin Laden was a graduate in civil engineering. Abu Bakr al Baghdadi, who was the leader of Islamic State, was a PhD holder.
Mhm.
In the UK, I remember this case, the 2007 Glasgow airport attack, which was carried out by Bilal Abdullah, also a doctor. So this is definitely something, the idea that educated people are not radicalized is a big misconception. And maybe in the Indian imagination, when we saw someone like Ajmal Kasab, he was profiled extensively, and uh, Kasab was this youth who belonged to a poverty struck village in Punjab province of Pakistan, made us believe that he was radicalized or part of this terror outfit, this big plot, because he was misled in need of money. But then we overlook that his handlers, who were running the show, were in fact people who were educated, had
Mhm.
professional backgrounds. So when we see the faces of these operatives, we might think that these are or suicide bombers or people who are misled. However, this phenomena, as you said, has existed across the world. In the UK, in the US, there was a phenomena where doctors were being radicalized by Islamic State, which also sort of pushed. Donald Trump came in, introduced this blanket ban on Muslim communities, although for multiple reasons. But
Yeah.
radicalization was definitely a stronger part of it. again, not to say that there is an issue with doctors or a particular profession. Radicalization is a phenomena that sort of goes beyond a person's professional, social, economic background.
Mhm. But radicalization does not necessarily mean you carry out acts of violence or conspire in acts of violence, isn't that?
Absolutely. Radicalization does not happen in a vacuum. It often develops in society, community, in today's times, increasingly in digital contexts. So, personal grievances, experiences of discrimination, or identity based narratives can combine a very powerful pull. For some professionals, the appeal lies in the sense of contributing meaningfully to a cause or a community um, within a revolutionary framework. So I want to run an important point that radicalization is again not confined to a single social class or profession. It is complex, can affect individuals across socio-economic spectrums. And like you said, right, even when a person is radicalized, capability and opportunity are equally important in this transition. Even
Mhm.
among radicalized individuals, violence often requires access to skills, resources, or networks that sort of enable action. Individuals move from grievance and cognitive engagements to social embedding, ideological commitment, and then potentially violent action. So I would say, in essence, holding radical beliefs does not make someone automatically dangerous. I
Mhm.
think that distinction is super important for us to understand, our authorities, policymakers to understand. And the shift from this thought to action depends on a combination of societal pressures, moral reasoning, triggering events. In the Indian context, I would say mostly communal and political fault lines, and then access to skills, networks, resources, and so on.
Mhm. So let's assume an ecosystem like, say, what we had in Kashmir not too long ago, a lot of violence, terror strikes, and so on. And somebody who has grown up in that kind of an ecosystem, is it easier to radicalize somebody from there? Or would you say it's the digital thing which could be anywhere, which is more infectious, if you want to call it that?
That's actually a great question and a complex one to answer because, like you said, in Kashmir, where there is a prevalent anti government sentiment in the society because of the political, historic context of that region, it's
Yeah.
easier to have a society, a sense of belonging with other people who are feeling the same. And I think today, digitally, social media also offers you that platform. Someone sitting in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala in front of their screens uh, can also access social media profiles of Islamic State. And that's something that these transnational groups have been doing very actively. From Al Qaeda to Islamic State, today the propaganda, the digital dissemination of their content has become so sophisticated. They are producing multilingual
Yeah.
um, propaganda where they will be targeting someone in Afghanistan, but also in Urdu in Pakistan, while also in South Indian languages in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, something that we've seen before. We saw this in Syria, where people traveled from all parts of the world, people from
Yeah.
Central Asia. There was a huge influx from Central Asia that went to Syria, to this so called Islamic State. So I think social media definitely provides you that sense of belonging, that space for these radical thoughts to nurture. It allows you a platform to exercise your thoughts and potentially turn that into action. Uh, and like I said, we've seen that a decade ago. And
Mhm.
that's something that groups have been. In fact, today, the Islamic State Khorasan province, which remains the most lethal faction of Islamic State, operates operates out of the Afghanistan, Pakistan, Central Asia region. However, it does not hold any territory now. Islamic State held
Yeah.
territory back in 2015, but it
Mm-hmm.
has a very strong network in Central Asia, in Turkey, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. They conducted attacks in Turkey, in Russia, and this was all done digitally. So now it's even more difficult to trace these networks. And like I said, this is where the involvement of professionals come in. When you have someone from technical fields, from the media background, they have a better understanding of these mechanisms. And so social media is a big enabler of recruitment, radicalization, and also sort of giving direction to these radicalized individuals.
So that's interesting. One need not control territory to be able to radicalize, influence, and encourage and incite. You can be sitting anywhere in the world and you just press a button and begin your. So that's. Do you think that's what happened to these doctors from Kashmir? I mean, although they grew up in that conflicted ecosystem, perhaps this was another enabler.
I would not dismiss that possibility. Social media could be a big driver, and you would see how militant organizations, leaders of these transnational groups, actually leverage local political, communal fault lines to build this recruitment. I remember when the Karnataka hijab ban came in a couple of years ago, Ayman al-Zawahiri, when now killed, but when Ayman al-Zawahiri was alive, and in fact, there was speculation if this person is alive, dead, if he's in Afghanistan. There was confusion about his whereabouts, and he released a video um, condemning this hijab ban. And at that point, Al Qaeda was trying to sort of push for their Al Qaeda Indian subcontinent faction, which in fact did not get much traction in Kashmir. So Al
Yeah.
Qaeda, with its ideology, could not make its breakthrough in Kashmir because the political realities of Kashmir are very different. So groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, who are more focused on the so-called Kashmiri separatist movement, um, could gain more recruitment there. So leaders at all times will be trying to play around, take away, exploit these fault lines through definitely through mostly through social media channels, because again, it is extremely difficult for these groups to thrive now in or to hold territories or to hold physical communities. So social
Mhm.
media is a great platform. Also, these groups, when they were on mainstream platforms like Facebook, Twitter, have now moved on to places like Rocket Chat, Telegram, Signal. So they are also very sophisticated networks.
Mhm. So I mean, from what you're telling me, it would seem that going forward, it may be safer for a group with those kind of terrorist ideas to not control any physical territory, but to just stick to a digital medium to get their thing across and even inspire attacks.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say social media is the primary vector of how they gain recruitments. We also saw this. I mean, there are bomb making videos that these groups
Yeah.
release, which can
Yeah.
also sort of encourage or inspire lone wolf attacks. Someone
Mm.
sitting in some part of India now can learn how to make homemade bombs at home. And if he's radicalized, I think this was a case that we saw in Bangalore, where there was an attack on the cafe where Islamic State, mostly when Islamic State lost territory in Syria and Iraq and those regions, they moved completely digitally. They were inspiring
Mhm.
people, releasing propaganda in different languages, inspiring people to conduct lone wolf attack. And these are low investment attacks for these groups as well, right? Because they don't hold territory, but if someone is conducting this attack in the name of Islamic State, they also get to promote it on their handles and say that, hey, look, even though we don't have territories, but we still possess the capabilities. And through these attacks, sort of recruit, gain more recruitment, radicalize more people. Groups now have women centric propaganda. The group in Pakistan called Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is based out of Pakistan and Afghanistan, is now disseminating propaganda that is specific to women. We saw that in Balochistan, where Sharia Baloch, who was a zoologist, a secondary school teacher, conducted a suicide blast in Karachi University against, it was an anti China position, but she was an educated professional. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing, similar to doctors for women to have women radicalized women performing acts of violence, its detection becomes harder for authorities. So these are not groups sitting in some tribal areas who are just being violent. These are systems that are organized. There are media departments. These are sophisticated organizational structures who operate very systematically, I would say.
So, Ashwarya, let's presume you're talking to people from the intelligence agencies, enforcement, and so on, And what is the advice you're going to give them? And what is the challenge they are facing? And what is the advice you would give them?
Very interesting question. I would say to address acts of violence, we need to get to the bottom of the problem. We need to first understand what is the root cause of radicalization. What is the breeding ground of radicalization? What are these narratives, these communal political fault lines that are feeding onto these radicalizations? We have had de-radicalization programs which have not been very successful. So I
Mhm.
think for our security agencies, we crackdowns will happen. We will investigate. We will imprison these people who are radicalized, who are inspired to conduct acts of violence. But I would take a step back. I would, in fact, recommend involvement of psychologists, involvement
Mhm.
of sociologists, involvement of people from different professional backgrounds to understand the cause of radicalization and address the issue from its root cause.
Mhm. So the family would have a role here.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. We have seen cases in Kashmir where the family had absolutely no idea of what was happening. Um, Burhan Wani's father was a school teacher, school principal. He had
Yeah.
no idea what his son was up to. In most cases, these also act as shield, where the wives, the family members of these militants would be playing a side role. In fact, something interesting in Afghanistan, Pakistan that happens today, the Afghan Taliban and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan have ideological, ethnic, familial ties. So, where these groups are aligned with each other, but to sort of cement and solidify this alignment, they will marry into each other. So, they have familial ties. So, it becomes a more intricate bond. So, in most cases, yes, families do play an intricate role. In most cases, families are absolutely unaware of what their child or what their sons or daughters are really
Is
up to.
that believable? I mean, this is somebody in your own home, and you have no idea what he or she is up to.
Absolutely. I think that is believable today when we look at social media, and it's not something new, right? Even in our everyday lives. Most times, the kind of content or the kind of content that your son or daughter has access to on social media, you often have no idea about. There are radical thoughts, you disseminate this radical ideology, radical content. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if your family members are unaware of the kind of content that you're consuming, the networks that you're linked with. So I don't think there is a right or wrong answers to that. I don't think investigating families will always get you to the person.
Mhm. So, last question: how does one, how do you tell a cop or somebody about what they now need to relearn? In order to handle this diversity of you know uh, people out there. What do they need to, you know, rethink and
They need to rethink, for starters, is let's start paying attention to propaganda. We have seen this before in Islamic State. The kind of propaganda that was released in Russian language, in Turkish language, which immediately led in couple of weeks, which led to attacks in Russia, in Turkey. So I think intelligence communities need to pay close attention to the propaganda, the kind of content that is being disseminated, the language that is used, the groups that they are targeting. I think just trying to understand, first recognize what are these channels, where these conversations are happening, where this discourse is unfolding, then trying to read between the lines, trying to understand that what is this propaganda talking about, what kind of people are they targeting, is Islamic State suddenly releasing a lot of anti-India propaganda, um, on what platforms are they talking. So essentially, point being to just understand social media channels better, to know that most of these extremist networks have moved online and they're not offline anymore. I mean, of course they are offline. It is important for logistical planning. You do need safe houses, but I would say that we must look at social media networks and all the discourse happening online. We need better understanding of the digital space if we want to understand how terrorist groups or militant factions have evolved today.
so is the dark web all that relevant now? I mean, you have so many digital platforms now.
We don't need to go as far as the dark web. It's happening right in front of us. It's happening on Signal, it's happening on Telegraph, it's happening on Rocket Chats. So it's you don't need to access the dark web. It's happening more openly. These outfits have Twitter. There are so many open source intelligence people doing open source work where they're openly publishing the propaganda communication, the statements published by these groups. And I think the struggle now or the challenge now is evolving with these groups, understanding the communication patterns, the narratives that are being told. And I think that would be a great start to just understand radicalization, and get intelligence from there.
Fascinating, Ashwarya. We can go on and on, but we are at the end of our time. And I've just been wondering where you've been all along. We need to explore these issues, I think, in greater depth. And probably we'll have more of these conversations going forward. For now, thanks very
Absolutely.
much. And it's been great meeting you.
Thank you for having me, Surya. Thank you so much.
That's all we have for you on this broadcast. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media.